I am so excited about this video because today we are reviewing all 3 Charlotte Tilbury foundations acquired with some effort and expense on my part. So I'm going to show you application, full day wear test, we're going to talk application methods, coverage, finish, oil control, basically everything you need to know to choose a foundation that's right for you. So at the end, I'll give you my final thoughts, tell you which ones I think are worth the £34 price tag, let you know my favourite, what's best for special occasions, and what foundation, or should I say foundations plural, I'm wearing on my face today. So for reference, I am a combination dry skin type. I get some oil around the nose here and around the chin. The chin is my most problematic part of my face. So those parts are a bit more oily, and then the rest of my skin is more on the dry side. I have some fine lines around my eyes because I'm almost 30. And I also have very deep smile lines. So what I'm going to do is wear the exact same skincare underneath each foundation, and no primers, no setting sprays, because I want you to see a fair comparison and I don't want them getting any extra help in terms of oil control. So let's go to the first foundation, which is the Magic Foundation. This claims to be a buildable demi-matte that stays in place for up to 13 hours. You can see from my pump here that it is very thick and very stiff. It also dries down incredibly quickly, which is why I would recommend applying it with a brush and working very, very fast. If you try and apply this with a sponge, it will go patchy because it just dries down so incredibly quickly. Now I have quite dewy skincare on underneath here. It's really important to prep your skin with all Charlotte Tilbury foundations because they are slightly on the drier side. And that extra hydration from my skincare means that I have additional time to blend. But as you can see, I'm still working pretty damn quickly. This formula also claims to plump the skin and smooth the appearance of lines and wrinkles. Now I don't have a ton of lines, but I do have some fine lines around the eyes and also pretty deep smile lines, so we will be testing that claim out. This foundation also claims to be buildable, and I would agree that it is. You can absolutely apply a second layer without any patchiness, and it doesn't look heavy or unnatural on the skin, which is wonderful. However, I would say that it is still a medium plus coverage. I would not say that this is full coverage, but it's definitely enough to cover small imperfections, spots, redness, and uneven skin tone. Personally, I think it gives a beautiful, natural, flawless finish to the skin, and I have some sheen coming through from my skincare underneath, which I really love. I do want to show you how this foundation wears powdered because a lot of people will set their makeup with a translucent powder, so I'm using the Laura Mercier translucent loose setting powder just on one half of my face so that you can see how it wears both powdered and unpowdered. Now, even though I have dry skin, I typically prefer to powder my makeup because I don't like to feel tacky, I don't like my hair sticking to my face, and I also don't want to get makeup all over my boyfriend's jumpers. The powder has obviously reduced the luminosity of the finish, but it doesn't look overly dry or heavy. Importantly, you can see that this looks gorgeous in natural light because that is how most of us are seeing our foundations, not in the studio but out in the real world, and this looks gorgeous. I am very, very impressed with this foundation. It also does not cause flashback, which is always a good sign. Moving on to our wear test. Here it is at 3 hours. Please excuse the untidiness of my living room. Now this looks almost exactly the same as when I applied it. Although it's demi-matte, it doesn't feel like it's sucking the moisture out of my skin like some matte formulas do. The powdered side does not look overly dry, and it's very impressive that this foundation does not gather in my smile lines because this is an issue for me. A little bit of shine coming through on the face now, but the product is pretty damn good at controlling oil. And importantly, even though a little oil has come through, the foundation is intact. It's not breaking up, it's not separating, and it's not looking gunky. So for a bit of a closer look, here we are in the studio so that you can really see what is going on. And my pores look pretty good, as do the smile lines. Now, I like to blot my foundation to remove oil. I don't typically apply more powder, but I do remove any excess oil with paper like this. Now you can see there is a little oil on the unpowdered side around the nose and chin area, but once I remove this oil, the foundation honestly looks perfect underneath. Like, it is flawless. Now on the powdered side, there's honestly like barely anything. Like, there is no oil on the side of my nose there. A little bit on my chin, which is more of my problem area, but again, very, very little to touch up. A little close up, and you can see still looking pretty damn good. The smile lines are honestly the most impressive part for me, because at 6 hours usually I would have so much creasing here, and there is nothing bad going on at all. By the way, I've also worn this foundation in 33 degrees Celsius heat, and it didn't break up then either. Now this is the final check-in because I do want to go to bed, but I can totally believe that I could wear this foundation for the 13 hours that it claims. It still looks really smooth on my chin and around my smile lines, which are usually my problem areas where foundation gathers, breaks up, separates, looks funky, and I'm just stunned by how this was worn, honestly, on both the powdered and non-powdered side. I have been wearing this foundation so much recently because it just looks so good, and I honestly think that you could wear this for pretty much any skin type. It even works for dry skin girls like me. Moving on to the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This claims to be a full coverage, natural matte, weightless foundation that gives a poreless look. You can see that it is much more liquidy than the Magic Foundation. It's going into a nice smooth blob there on my palette. And this means that it does dry down a little bit slower than the Magic Foundation, so you do have more time to work with it. Therefore, if you really did want to use a sponge with this, you could. However, I would recommend using a brush, because I've compared this with a sponge on one side of my face and a brush on the other, and honestly the sponge side felt a lot heavier. This brush from Real Techniques is a really great brush for full coverage formulas where you want to apply a light layer, and a light layer is really all you need with this foundation. It is full coverage. It is full coverage. Like, this is the most full coverage foundation I have ever tried. So if that's important to you, maybe this might be your foundation. I'm building it up here where I get some redness on my cheeks, and you can see it builds up very smoothly, it layers very well, and when you layer on that second coat of foundation, even though I'm applying very sheer layers, it does cover pretty much everything. It's almost like a concealer. I'm applying it with my finger around the eyes, and this is a thing you could do actually with this foundation. If you have any brush strokes, you can tap them out with your finger very easily. I would recommend using your finger to tap out brush strokes rather than a sponge, because a sponge can kind of pick up the product a little bit, shear it out, make it look a little bit patchy if it has already dried down. So here you can see I am actually kind of using it like a concealer, and the great thing about that is obviously you don't have to worry about shade matching your foundation to your concealer. You just take a little bit of this on your finger, apply it to any spots that you have, and boom, they are gone. However, this foundation does come with some downsides. I would not agree that it feels weightless on the skin. You can definitely feel it, even though I've applied a very sheer layer. Immediately after application, I do agree that this looks flawless and poreless, but let's see what happens later on in the day. Adding some powder now. As before, I'm using the Laura Mercier Translucent Loose Setting Powder so that you can see for yourself how this wears on the powdered versus the unpowdered side. Despite looking slightly luminous, this is actually a more drying formula than the Magic Foundation. It just seems to have some kind of light reflecting pigments in it that make it look a little bit glowy. And of course, the skincare you place under your foundation is going to affect how it looks, which is why on me right now it does look slightly more luminous. It's always important to show the foundation in natural light, so here we are in the office. Please excuse my laundry in the background. I am not a very tidy person. And right now it is looking lovely, although I would say that this shade is supposed to be a cool tone shade, and I would disagree with that. I think it definitely has a more peachy, not orange, but certainly not cool undertone. But the major issue with this foundation? Flashback. So much flashback. Personally, I feel like having full coverage and flashing back are two qualities that really work against each other, because I'd usually choose a higher coverage foundation for special events where there's going to be photographs. At the 3-hour mark, I prefer this on the non-powdered side. I feel like my dry skin plus the matte formulation plus powder is really making the powdered side of my face, particularly my nose, look dry. Now on the unpowdered side, it's also sinking into lines a little bit, and that is something that you would expect from foundation, but again, it means it's not quite as good as the Magic foundation. By the 6-hour mark, a little bit of oil has broken through, and I'm actually grateful for it, because now the powdered side of my face does not feel quite so dry. However, we are starting to get a few texture issues emerging around the side of the mouth and on the chin. Although from a distance the foundation still looks pretty damn good, and it looks nice across most of my face, even close up. Around the eyes there is some sinkage into those little fine lines, and around the chin this sort of crackling that mostly is the result of the foundation being set down, the face moving, and the foundation being unable to move with the face, and so you get some texture where these fine little cracks emerge in the foundation. As I said before, my skin plus this foundation plus this powder feels dry, and you can see that there is very, very little oil, if any, to be removed across most of the powdered side of my face. Even on the side without powder, this is such a matte, dry formula that the only place really where there is any oil is around the chin. Not only does this foundation not really need to be powdered, at least on my skin, the advantage of not powdering it means you can go in and tap out any little imperfections with a finger. In contrast, on the set side, you really can't do that, because once the powder is added, there's just no way you're going to be able to blend it again. It's actually really weird to me to prefer unpowdered foundation. At 10 hours, as you would expect, a little bit more oil has appeared again, and we have a continuing of the chin issues. On the powdered side, there is a cracking, a texture issue that cannot be fixed because the foundation is completely set. And on the unpowdered side, a little bit of breakup due to oil. You can also see where it has sunk into the lines around my eyes, and my nose is definitely looking a little bit dry and patchy. I noticed the video camera wasn't really doing justice to the breakup around my chin, so here is a nice close-up photo so you can see the bits that look kind of gross. The advantage of the unpowdered side is that I can again go over with my finger and just touch up and sort out where it's separated. For me personally, I prefer to mix this foundation with other products like moisturisers or dewy primers to create a formula that is less dry, less matte, still has good coverage, but isn't quite so crazy heavy. Our final foundation is the Light Wonder, which describes itself as a luminous tint, which tells you how light this coverage is going to be. Now this is the most liquidy of the formulas, and it is the least matte. It doesn't dry down anywhere near as fast as the other two, and so you can apply this in pretty much any way you like. Now because it is a liquidy and sheer coverage, I prefer to go in with my fingers first of all to apply the majority of the foundation. However, you can apply this with both a sponge and a brush. Now, this coverage is so minimal. I have BB creams that give more coverage than this foundation, and I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. There's a time and place for light coverage, and I am usually a luminous light to medium coverage girl. However, you may feel like the amount of pigment in this foundation is not worth the £34 price tag. It's the same price as the other two. All of these foundations are £34, and obviously the other two give a lot more coverage. So it's really up to you whether you want to pay this much money for such a light coverage product. That being said, it does look very pretty on the skin. This product claims to smooth, illuminate, minimise pores, reduce wrinkles, even out the complexion, and hydrate the skin for up to 18 hours. Now we're going to talk about whether it really does all of those things. Again, I think this has some kind of light reflecting pigment in it that gives it that luminosity, because although it claims to be ideal for dry, normal and combination skin types and is the least matte of all the formulas, It's definitely not dewy. Honestly, none of the Charlotte Tilbury formulas are dewy. Although it is definitely sheer, you can see that it is reducing redness in my complexion, evening it out, as it claims to do, and generally adding a little perfecting layer. But I would dispute the claim that it minimises pores, and I really don't feel that it hydrates the skin for up to 18 hours. Not my dry skin anyway. Now this does build up the tiniest bit, but not a whole lot. Like, you are not going to get anywhere even close to a medium coverage with this. As for the close-up, right now, it kind of looks like I'm not really wearing anything. This is definitely a foundation. Well, can we call it foundation? Maybe we should call it a tinted moisturiser for if you're already feeling confident with your skin and you just want to even out that skin tone a little bit without really covering up any spots or hyperpigmentation. Again, I'm powdering half of my face so that you can see how it wears on the two different sides. And again, with this one, I do actually prefer it with less powder, despite the fact that the powder right now is adding about as much coverage again as the foundation by itself. Another quick close-up, you can really see that spot just on the side of my nose near my eye. This foundation is just not covering anything. This coverage is a little on the light side, even for me. I will say though, in natural light, I definitely look brightened and evened out, and I don't hate it. Like, it's very light coverage, but it is doing something that I can't quite put my finger on. Powdered side is already feeling a little dry though. And just to confirm for you, this one does not flash back anywhere near as badly as the Airbrush Flawless. At 3 hours, there isn't a whole lot of change, just a little gathering of product in the smile lines, as I often find, even with the lightest coverage foundations. I am definitely feeling dry though. Once you powder this, it's not ideal for dry skins at all. Like, you've got to leave it unpowdered. See the dryness I've got going on here? Along with being too dry on the powdered side, I am now getting a bit of oiliness and breakup on the unpowdered side. You can definitely see shine going on. Also, I had to blow my nose, so I've lost pretty much all coverage on the end of my nose now. Now, even though the unpowdered side is oily, and you can definitely see in the studio lights how shiny I am, I do still prefer that side to the powdered side, because with the powdered side I'm getting kind of a weird effect on my chin. I'm getting a little bit of texture, and it's just so matte. It's so matte. There is like no oil coming off my face, around my nose and on my forehead, and just the tiniest little bit, like the tiniest bit on my chin. Now, as for the unpowdered side, you can definitely see that oil. The paper is just stuck to my face. I am that oily. But the advantage is that I can easily remove it with blotting powder, and then I can go in and blend with my finger, as I have showed you several times now with the other foundations. If you have oil, you can remove it, and if it isn't powdered, you can blend it back out. If it is powdered, you're pretty much stuck with it as it is, which obviously isn't a problem if your foundation stays smooth. Another close-up for you so that you can see the lack of foundation on my nose. Lovely. And I would just like to point out that I've used this powder with a lot of different foundations, and although it is mattifying, I don't usually find it drying to this extent. I'm using a powder I know well so that I can determine what's going on with the foundation formula underneath. I do like this foundation as a quick, oh dear, I need to go to the shops and I look kind of tired, let's quickly throw one product on before I go out the door, kind of a thing. But that's about it. So we're pretty much at the end, but it's time for final thoughts, and you can probably guess which one of these is my favourite. Honestly, I am blown away by the formula of the Magic foundation. Now, the very first time I used this, I pumped it out and I thought, this isn't going to be for me, because it was such a stiff formula and it was so dry, and I do struggle with sort of some dry skin issues and things like that, and I thought it wasn't going to be for me at all. But I was wrong. Okay, so the cons of this are obviously the slight trickiness of application. You do need to be confident with a brush and work quickly. But once it is on, like, it really does deserve the name of Magic, because it lasts so well. And I was amazed by how little it like sunk in and creased around the smile line area, because I have that problem with basically every foundation that I own. I think this is the perfect amount of coverage for even special occasions. Like, I personally like my skin to still resemble skin and not a mask. So this kind of medium plus, and it's a strong medium, like it's no light medium, definitely medium heading towards full coverage. This honestly is beautiful. It really does cover everything you need it to while still looking like skin. I would recommend this to anybody who needs their foundation to look lovely for a long time. So this is now at the top of my list in terms of potential wedding day foundations. I'm not getting married anytime soon, I just have a list in my head because it photographs so well and it stays so beautifully on the skin whilst looking like skin. I know I keep saying that, but it's so important to me personally that my skin still resembles skin and I look like a human being. I would also recommend this to anybody who works long shifts in front of the public. So maybe you're an air hostess, you work in retail, you're the concierge of I mean that you work front desk. Is that concierge? You work on the front desk of a fancy hotel and you're expected to wear makeup and look lovely, but you work a long shift and you need it to not break up, wear off, look gunky, etc, etc, etc. I think this is really lovely and the formula is really it's unique. I've never tried a foundation quite like this and it's definitely, in my opinion, worth that £34 price tag. The only reason I would choose the Airbrush Flawless over the Magic is if you really want that full coverage. As I've said, I am not a super full coverage person. For my skin personally, it's not necessary and I put a lot of time and effort and money into skincare. So I want my skin to still sort of show through a bit and not just look completely masked. So in terms of the coverage, is this worth £34? I would say yes, if you want super full coverage, because honestly, I don't have any foundations that are as full coverage as this one. But unless you're really looking for that, I would stick with the Magic foundation because, okay, and here's the thing, we need to distinguish between oil control and how well the foundation stays when oil does come through. So this one, despite looking a little bit more luminous and being a more liquidy formula, is actually more matte and more drying. It controls oil slightly better than this one. However, when the oil did come through, as it inevitably does, the Magic foundation handled it better in terms of separating, breaking up, etc, etc, etc. So, for me that means the Magic foundation wins because it's more important to me that the texture of my foundation stays smooth. I can dab away the oil. It's harder to fix the texture of your foundation, especially if you've powdered it. But if you do want the slightly higher oil control and the very full finish, you have this one. Now, the Light Wonder. I like light coverage, okay, I really do. If you watch some of my other videos, you know I'm kind of into like natural, dewy, luminous skin kind of things. And so light to medium coverage is something that I wear and I go for. But this is a tint. I mean, it literally says on the back that it's a tint. It's super light coverage. So today, I'm actually wearing these two mixed together around 50-50. And I personally find that that gives me a nice light to medium, easily blendable, a little bit more fluid formula. I've only powdered it just sort of in this circle here. It's not powdered around my smile lines or my chin. As I've said throughout this video, like I'm kind of really surprised by how much I like these foundations unpowdered. I feel like almost the powder messes with the formulation of the foundation too much and it looks better just leaving it alone and not powdering it, which I have to kind of get used to because I do usually like to powder my makeup. This on its own though is just such light coverage that I feel like, I don't know what you're quite paying for. I don't feel like the formulation is that special to be like £34 worth. Like I know you're not just paying for pigment and coverage when you pay for a more expensive foundation, you're paying for how well it lasts, how luminous it is, how brightening, like skincare benefits that are included, and you know, all three of these foundations claim to have skincare benefits as well. But personally, I have BB creams that I prefer to this that cost like £10. Just my personal preference. But if you are looking for just a very subtle everyday foundation and you don't struggle with oil and you don't struggle with being super dry, if you're like more in that middle range in terms of skincare types, so you're not struggling on either extremes, then this is a nice light coverage foundation. But personally, as with this one, I feel like I will be mixing these either together or with other things. This one with luminous primer or moisturizer, and this one with something slightly heavier coverage to keep the kind of quite nice luminous skin brightening like formulation of this, but with a little bit more pigment in it. Like maybe I'll add some pigment drops, you know, when you get foundations that are supposed to be mixed with moisturizer or sun cream because they're just like pigment drops. I have some Clinique ones that I think. I haven't tried that with this one yet. I've tried mixing it with some things, but not with those pigment drops. So that'll be something I'm experimenting with. Do I regret purchasing any of these foundations? No, because I wanted to do a video and I did buy them all like discounted in some way or another, because £34 times 3 is a lot of money, and I did not spend that much money. I just want to clarify that. I did not spend that much money on all these three foundations. I acquired them at discounts in various ways. But this one I absolutely love, obviously. I will get use out of all three of them, but this is the special one to me. This is the one that's unique. This is the one that has a formula that is not similar to like all other foundations. And this is the one that I kind of just want to wear every day, to be honest, and that I will be happily purchasing in a paler shade as it gets towards winter. And I need a less dark, I mean, shade 3 isn't dark, but I need like maybe shade 1 or shade 2 probably for winter. And I will be happily purchasing that. Even if I have to purchase it at full price, I will purchase that. The very last thing is just that you do need to prep your skin. You need to think about your skincare underneath these foundations, because none of them are, in my opinion, particularly hydrating. I know these two do claim to hydrate the skin, but I personally don't really feel that myself. And honestly, trying these foundations kind of makes it make sense that Charlotte Tilbury's Magic Cream is so rich, because you really do need the moisture and the hydration from your skincare before you go in with these, because the formulas are more dry. Even this one, I personally find them all quite dry. So that's just my thoughts. I'd say these are not really like beginners foundations. This one you could use as a beginner, but whether if you're a beginner, why do you want to spend £34 on a foundation like while you're still getting to know what you like? You probably wouldn't. And then these two, you need a little bit of skill, patience, practice with the formulas and with how you apply and blend them. This one because it's just so heavy if you don't apply it lightly, and this one because of that super fast dry down, which makes it quite difficult to blend. So not really beginners foundations, but definitely if you are happy to apply foundations with a brush and you feel like you know what you're doing with a foundation brush, then you know these have their good points and their bad points, but again, this one is special. This one lives now in my heart. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you decide whether you want to purchase any of these Charlotte Tilbury foundations. If you did enjoy this video, please subscribe and I will see you next time. Bye.